All right, why don't we start off with something we just mentioned a short time ago. The implied volatility on this stock, 7.5%, upside or downside move. That's what the options market is telling us. Which way do you think this whole thing is going? What's the broader market implication?
I think that the broader market implication is that, tariffs are still causing a lot of uncertainty. What I think we're really going to be seeing in this kind of quarterly earnings is how much did their customers say, oh, wow, if these tariffs come in hard, this could add a ton of cost to our chips. And how much did they sort of pre-buy? And so if they pre-bought a lot, we're going to see great numbers. If they decided to sort of wait it out a little bit because they're concerned about their cash flows elsewhere, then we could see something more lackluster. The problem is that neither of those outcomes has much to do with Nvidia, and it has a lot more to do with the global macro.
All right, so it has a lot more to do with the global macro. What do you see as being, I guess, the effect of this Nvidia report, whether it's good or bad? What do you see as the secondary moves?
Yeah.
Will it be data centers? Will it be software? What areas are you seeing possible movements off of this report?
I think that it's probably going to be the software companies because software is so sort of inoculated relatively against tariffs. It is very hard to tariff, Google or Facebook for the fact that they export, their tech services around the world. And so I think that if they are still great net buyers of Nvidia chips, that people will look at the rest of the Mag 7 and say, let's buy some of those names. I personally think that the data center play has been a bit overplayed. There's a little too much excitement there, so I don't know that it's necessarily going to have a huge pop. That being said, one thing about data centers is a lot of them are being built in the U.S., and we have an administration who really, really, really wants to go to as many ribbon cuttings as possible in the U.S. to say, hey, we're creating jobs here. So maybe because of the political moves, the data center play will work, but I don't think on the fundamentals that is sort of the best one.
In previous reports, we heard Nvidia and Jensen Huang talk about moving into physical AI, robotics, and things like that. What do you see as potentially the line of business they're going to highlight this time around? We know about the data center business, we know about the AI chip business, and even the fact that they're trying to move into an ecosystem with software. But what area do you see them pushing into, or maybe talking about pushing into, to, I guess, make up for the $5.5 billion charge? The street's giving them a pass, but it's still something that is kind of an overhang on this stock, the idea that tariffs and regulation could impact the company.
I would be surprised right now if they went all in on the robotics story because most robotics are still coming, the components are still coming from places that have massive exposure to tariffs. And the reality is that we still haven't really found a customer for all of these humanoid robots. They just look really cool in presentations. And so I would be a little bit surprised to see them lean in on that story this particular quarter because of the tariff risk. I think software is an excellent story to lean in on. I think that it's a really interesting moment to do that in part because that's a little bit more inoculated against tariffs. And the reality is that is what most AI is used for. So if they build their own ecosystem, that could be a really, really, really interesting story for them to sell versus these sort of very lovely, robot factory workers.
Yeah, by the way, we're showing some video of these robots. Looks like they're taking stuff out of like a pen holder. I don't even know what they're doing, but we're showing some of the tasks that they can do right now. One thing I do want to talk to you about, yes, Sarah, we're going to get into this just in a bit. Salesforce earnings. Really what I want to talk to you about is them acquiring Informatica to kind of boost their AI capabilities. What does that say to you right now about the AI race? The fact that we're seeing a company like a Salesforce that's been telling us they're already enterprise AI ready, making an acquisition like this. It was only, and it's hard to say only, it was only $8 billion, a lot less than they paid for Slack and other acquisitions.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's a great example of Mark Benioff understanding his job, which is if he buys something for $8 billion and then the stock moves 10 million, 20 billion more up because the street says, wow, they really do know what they're doing in AI, that's a win. I think we saw that with Microsoft and their OpenAI investments where they didn't really need to necessarily be doing that. But when you look at what that has done to their stock price over the last few years, it has been far, far, far more valuable than the cash that they put in to OpenAI. And so I think some of these legacy companies are realizing that especially in a moment where it's relatively cheap to buy companies, it can be a great way to really get the street to understand your story, that you are serious about this category, that whether or not you've been doing it in-house already, now they can't ignore you because you brought in a shiny new object and said, look, we're really doing it this time.